According to a parliamentary response by Minister Nathi Mthethwa, 7 billion rand in claims were brought against the police in the 2011-2012 financial year. That's equivalent to the market cap, roughly, of Harmony Gold. This is Tonight. I'm Bruce Whitfield, and tonight I'm joined by Professor Peter Jordi, who's Associate Professor and Attorney at the Wits Law Clinic, and Julian Rademeyer, who's Editor at Africa Check, to dissect the causes and effects of such a high claims bill. This is 2011-2012. Have you got more recent numbers, Julian?
Well, the most recent figures, according to the police annual report for the 2013 and 14 year, is just over the 20 billion mark. Of that number, they'd settled 250 million in claims in that particular year. 3.4 billion in claims have been cancelled or reduced. Big figures, but they don't show the reality of the situation.
Prof, what is the reality of the situation? I mean, 20 billion versus 7 billion 2 years ago suggests a police service in crisis, or not?
Well, there is an increase in the amount of litigation that's being conducted by the police.
Against the police?
Yes, against the police,
yeah.
Sorry. As litigation against the Road Accident Fund is diminished, people are now taking the opportunity to rather litigate against the police, for example. So there will be more litigation going on against the police. But the amount claimed in a summons is not going to be the amount that is likely to be awarded at the end in respect of these kind of personal injury cases. It's likely that a significantly lower amount will be awarded than was claimed. And I, for example, have seen a summons for a short period of detention that somebody issued in his own name for R1 billion.
Okay.
When he's like,
I mean, I'm really cross. I get arrested, wrongfully arrested at a roadblock. I'm accused of all sorts of terrible things, and I'm exonerated a week later after spending a week in police cells. I've been humiliated, possibly abused, and clearly my life has changed, possibly forever. Is that worth R1 billion?
No, you'll get something from 40 to 150,000 rand. But it's very easy to issue a summons for R1 billion.
Why is the process so skewed and so obtuse then?
Well, as an attorney, we sue for more than we think will be awarded, so that
you're a trade unionist at heart, really. Yes.
We don't get less.
Yeah.
If we are awarded exactly what we claimed, or perhaps we're due a little bit more than we claimed, we've been negligent in serving our client by suing for too little. So therefore we must sue for more than we think would be reasonably awarded to our client.
Lies, damn lies and statistics, Julian Rademeyer. I mean, your job is uncovering the reality of the numbers. And the numbers in this particular case seem to belie a much more benign truth.
Well, I think what the numbers do and what's useful here are the numbers of claims that are being issued. You know, we're seeing growing numbers of claims. We've seen, more than a 300% increase in police brutality cases over the past decade. Okay. All of this points to an organization in crisis. It's become a bit of a cliche, but people are taking these cases to court. The numbers of cases are there. They're not being dealt with by the police. There are real concerns about the police's ability to do their job, to deal with people. You have on average 2,000 cases, criminal cases a year being lodged against police officials. Last year, the police's own internal documents showed that there were roughly 8,500 criminal cases pending against police officials. So there are serious concerns about that, and I think it points to the rot in an organization that goes back a long time. Years of mismanagement by civilian leaders who have no policing experience. The politics of policing, the talk of shoot to kill, the rhetoric. Susan Shabanga a few years ago saying, shoot the bastards, Becky Clearly saying similar things. And that is quite problematic.
When we look at the 3,000 increase in police brutality claims, for example, over the last decade, are 3,000% more people being brutalized by police, or people simply responding differently? Because in the apartheid South Africa, it was absolutely pointless complaining against the police, and we kind of get a sense that we're entitled to do so now. Is there a sense of what the real position is?
I would say that people now know that they can get money for unlawful arrest and detention claims, for example, and they know that it's fairly easy to get that money, and therefore are approaching attorneys.
Fairly easy to get the money. Take me through the process. I mean, I'm stopped at a roadblock. I blow into a breathalyzer. I've had a glass of wine. It teeters on the brink of legal versus illegal. I'm arrested. By the time the blood gets drawn, the alcohol in my blood is dropped, yet I'm detained overnight. And I then take a claim against the police for wrongful arrest.
Well, it's a question of, there perhaps you've committed an offence in the policeman's presence. There are also situations where you will have been alleged to have committed an offence and the police have a suspicion that you did. Whether this suspicion is reasonable or not will be the question. So I'm looking for perhaps a slightly better case than the one that you've posited, and I will know quickly in the first couple of moments of speaking to you that I will win that case. It will just take 1.5 years to win. But
it takes 1.5 years. Now, why does it take 1.5 years? Do the police deliberately drag their feet, or is it a question of competence within the police legal department in getting through the various claims against them?
Litigation is a slow process. Litigation for the police is conducted by the state attorney, and there are various rules that have to be followed, and each of the steps dictated by those rules takes time. So, and once you are ready to apply for a trial date, and that will take 6 months, once the 6 months is up, the court roll is chock-a-block with similar cases perhaps, and it takes 1 year then to get a trial date.
When we look at this scenario, though, if the police claims process was more efficient, would it be even more burdened with claims? Because it is such a cumbersome process, many people give up. Now, there may be legitimate claims that are tragically given up, but also many chances may very well go, you know what, it's not worth the hassle, and disappear.
Yes, if I was the Minister of Police, I'd be fairly wary of easily settling claims because, you know, time
become
heals.
a soft target. Yeah.
That's right.
You become an absolutely soft target. And that's the interesting number, isn't it? I mean, 250 million rands worth of claims were paid, 3.4 billion rands worth were either cancelled or reduced.
Yes, exactly.
Does the state ever counterclaim against people who accuse it of wrongdoing?
I mean, I think Professor Jordi would probably be more...
I mean,
it may occasionally bring a counterclaim against the plaintiff.
A malicious claim of some description.
And in theory, the loser must pay the winner's legal expenses. So if the police win, and they occasionally do, if they win, they're entitled to sue the plaintiff for the cost of the litigation that they've incurred.
Does that happen?
It may happen, but most of the people bringing the litigation, most of the plaintiffs are indigent, and therefore trying to recover costs would be throwing good money after bad.
But we sit in a scenario, Julian, don't we, of really big numbers being thrown about, and what Africa Check does and does so well is you're a little bit like Mythbusters on the Discovery Channel, and here is the myth and here is the reality. So often the scary numbers bandied about aren't so scary. So here's Nathi Mthethwa throwing a cat amongst the pigeons when perhaps we could be a little bit more circumspect about the potential liability police face.
No, I mean, we have, you know, large numbers thrown around. You know, if you look at cases of human trafficking, you know, the claim that 30,000 children are trafficked every year. Those are the sorts of claims that we look at. And
they translate then into legislation and stupidity.
Yeah.
You know, with visa controls.
I mean, I think we shouldn't underplay, you know, what these numbers point to, and those are the concerns of police. You know, the lack of training that exists in certain circumstances with the police. You know, the trouble that began so many years ago under Jackie Salibi, with the disbandment of special units, with the attempt to put more boots on the ground, recruiting 70,000 police, many of them poorly trained, shortening the training period from 2 years to 1 year, all of that has real-world, you know, effects and impacts. And we've seen, you know, growing cases culminating obviously in Marikana, with police, public order police, you know, overstepping the mark in some instances, people being shot, the number of shootings increasing, all those sorts of cases. So I think in some ways this does point to a problem, and the number of claims potentially point to a problem.
So it's about the trends rather than the quantum.
Yes, exactly.
Which is potentially more useful.
Yes.
We look at Parliament recently, Prof, and we see what, you know, the jackboots in Parliament. I mean, clumsy policing at its very best.
Yes, and which may give rise to a number of civil claims. you know, the TV footage would be good evidence.
Yeah, absolutely right. Do we have a crisis in policing, or do we just have a very big problem? How would you classify it?
I think we have a big problem. Yeah.
What does it take to take it from a big problem to a crisis? Because if you're at the receiving end of injustice, it's a crisis. If you sit in the cool comfort of your lounge, oh, it's a big problem.
In many cases, the police can succeed in securing convictions and making sure that in the end justice is done. I don't think the police are entirely dysfunctional. But there is a problem with corruption, predatory policing, and leadership.
What do the corruption stats tell you when you look from an Africa Check perspective? What are corruption?
It's incredibly difficult to pin down. The police have put out figures that they, looking at cases involving, I think, 1,500 police officials. Those cases are being unpacked. There are no reliable figures. One of the other problems that's faced is that units like the anti-corruption unit, which had quite a successful track record, was shut down in 2002 after only 7 years in existence. The Independent Police Investigative Directorate is also, doesn't necessarily have the funding or the resources that it requires to do the proper investigation. It also, it falls under the police ministry. So there are questions around that too.
And the fact that there are 8,500 police officers with questions against them, and many of them will have an impeccable record, and those allegations won't stand up in court. Yeah. But maybe half will, maybe a quarter will. There's still 2,000 or 4,000 police officers who shouldn't be carrying a badge. Not that we carry a badge, but you understand the Hollywood.
I think part of the problem is, the institutional culture of the police, and this goes back, way before now. I mean, dates back to the 80s and 70s, whatever. Police tend to protect their own. Yeah. And you see this with cases where case dockets go missing, where investigations are not completed. Famous example is the shooting of Tebogo Mkonza, a teenager in the Free State province during protests in Harrismith. Yeah. And that trial went absolutely nowhere. So those again are real concerns. And I think that there are efforts by the police to be more open and more outspoken about corruption in the ranks and about issues like that. But we still need to see justice being done in those cases. We still need to see strong steps being taken, and more independence when it comes to investigations.
But that's a big ask, Prof.
Yes, but I have recently seen a bit of a change in that in the police. What happened was the police were torturing people, and the torturers were immune from prosecution. But recently, over the last couple of months, I've noticed that the police seem to be using internal discipline mechanisms against torturers, which they weren't doing before. They weren't prosecuted criminally, and they weren't dealt with internally. Now they're being dealt with internally. There's a little bit of hope.
There we go. Professor Peter Jordi, Associate Professor and Attorney at the Wits Law Clinic, and Julian Rademeyer, the Editor at Africa Check. Thank you for watching. There'll be more tonight, tomorrow. Good night and goodbye.